Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, East of Eden Creations. This is part 2 of the video series, My Granddaughter's Quilts. I am currently in the process of making quilts for both my granddaughters, one who's 2 years old and one who's on the way. And I wanted to bring you along in the process so that I would have this video diary to share, not just with you, but also my children and eventually my grandchildren. Let's get started. So in the last video, I cut the fat quarter fabrics into two 10-inch squares. In this video, what I'll be doing is cutting the actual pieces to make my opposite squares for the blankets, and I wanted to take you along in that process. So what I'm going to do is flip the camera, but first, if you have not watched the first video or the first video in this series, please go do that, then come back to this, and I'll see you when you get back. And if you've already watched it, stay here. Thank you. So what I've done so far is I've set up my block, and again, excuse the shadowing. I'm working with what I have. Eventually lighting and everything else will get better, but thank you for being here in the video. So if you remember, in the last video that I did in this series, I explained that I was using a quilt square to make my granddaughter's quilts. And I showed you also that I had matched up certain patterns to go with each other. And these are the two patterns that I matched up to go with each other. Let me just zoom in a little bit here. And so what I wanted to do, again, this is coming out darker in the camera than it actually is in person. It's more of a grayish teal color than the dark color that you see on screen. But these are the two patterns that I matched together for this particular quilt square. And what I did was, after I finished cutting the squares in the last video, I matched the two patterns that go with the two fabrics. I just put the light fabrics back together. Excuse my stuttering. Now what I'm going to do today is, well, let me back up. I did that so that in cutting the strips today, it would be easier to keep like patterns together until I get to the point where I want to make the different squares. Okay, so now, again, if you remember, let me back out a little bit before I get started here. In the last video, I told you where to cut. According to the video that I found on Pinterest, you need to cut two 2-inch strips from one side of the square, of this 10-inch square. Right? So what I'm going to do is line up my square in this grid pattern here, okay? So that I can get the most accurate cut as possible. Now, what I'm going to do is take that same ruler from the last video, and I'm going to lay that here. This is 2 inches, 2-inch squares here, okay? I'm going to lay that right here. And this grid cutting mat will also help you line it up to make sure you get two accurate strips. Here we go. And this time my line reference is 14 and 21. Again, I am using a Fiskars rotary cutter. You can find them at your local craft store, or you can purchase them online, as well as the ruler and the rotary cutting mat. As far as I know, I have not looked, so I can't confirm that. but I do believe that you can still purchase these things online. Also, really quick before I cut my first strip, I did try to link the video from Pinterest, but because my account is still building, I was not able to do that on YouTube, and I did put the information in the description bar of the last video that I did in this series. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments below and I'll try to answer to the best of my ability. Okay, back to cutting. So I'm going to take my safety off. Safety on, you see the little gray ring around it? Safety off. There's no gray ring. Okay, again, please be careful. I'm going to cut my first strip. One. Move that to the side. Line my fabric back up. And cut another 2-inch strip. Okay, now that I have my first two 2-inch strips, which is actually 4 because it's layered, it's two fabric squares on top of each other. Now what the video called for me to do was to turn this line this back up. There you go. Line it back up on my grid square, a grid pattern. And we're going to cut 2 more 2-inch strips from this rectangle. Okay. Almost cut it too. There we go. That's better. 1. And as you can see, the camera is jiggling a little bit because it's attached to my table, but that's your second cut. Line your fabric back up again, just to make sure you have accurate cut. And make my last 2-inch cut with this particular fabric pattern. And again, I am not a professional sewer. I just happen to love it and wanted to make my granddaughter some quilts, and I wanted to bring you along on this process. So thank you for being here. And gonna make my last cut. Okay. So now you have, I think this may be a 5-inch. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I can't see it. So here you have one 5-inch square from the middle. Wait a minute, is it 5 or 6? 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm sorry, 6-inch square from the middle. Then you have 2 so this is a 6 by 6. This is a 2 by 7. So you have 2 of those. And then you have 2 by 10, 10-inch square. And you continue to cut the fabric pieces like that until you've cut all of the strips that you need. Okay. Sorry, you can't see it. There you go. All right, so I'm going to cut one more square, and then I'm going to stop talking and just cut the strips that I need for this particular blanket, because I am making 2 blankets, remember? So let me cut this other one, and then I'll stop talking and you can just watch the process. And I'll try to speed up the video in this one. Still learning, so. Okay, so again, we're going to cut two 10-inch, we're cutting 2 10-by-2 strips from this side of the fabric, or square. Oh, it's a little curved. It'll be all right. Two. Those are my 2 2-by-10 strips from the 10-inch square. We're going to rotate it. Make sure you line up. If you're layering your fabric, make sure you line up all of your layers before you cut, okay? And then cut 2 2-by-6 strips from this long rectangle. Okay. 1. 2. Okay. Now remember, the pattern that I'm making, the quilt blocks, I'm going to bring this other one back in here before I start talking. The quilt blocks that I am making will switch or swap these 2 color patterns together. Let me come out just a little bit. Okay. Now, I want to show you what that's going to look like, so bear with me. This one here. This one here. Actually. There you go. Okay. So now, this is what the premise of this is, and why you have to cut 2 10-inch squares for this particular quilt block. Now I'm going to move this top one out of the way and set up these 2 squares because it is layered, remember? Separate this fabric. So in this quilt, I'll have 2 squares that are the same of each pattern, or 2 quilt blocks that will be the same. And this is what it'll look like once it's sewn together. How cute. I love it. Let me zoom in so you can see that. Let me go just a smidge. Okay. I love it. Now let me show you what the opposite pattern will look like. So I'll have two of this particular layout, and then two of this layout. How fun, right? And I know, I'm excited. I can't hardly talk. So let me do this. I'm going to separate the two patterns and I'll be right back. So here is what the two quilt blocks will look like side by side. And I must say I am very pleased. I'm excited. And what I'm going to do now is start cutting the rest of my pieces from quilt 1. And then I'll do quilt 2 offline, and then I'll come back at the end, okay? Ah, Savita. Okay, guys, here we go. I have cut, sorted, and laid out both blankets just to give you an overview of what the patterns are. This is quilt one for granddaughter that'll be born this year. Ooh, sorry about that. And just as in some extra information here, I was counting the quilt squares for this particular blanket, and I didn't have enough, so I had to cut this pattern here to add with it just to give it enough length and for to fit her crib. But for this particular one here, and I added one here as well. Which one did I add? Oh, here we go. I cut another one for this one as well here. And because she's 2 years old and she's a little bit bigger and she has a twin size bed, so I had to adjust